Marco. It's 1995, and I'm sitting in the computer engineering lab of the University of Toronto working on an assignment. I look over my friend's shoulder. I see a big capital N blinking on the corner of his screen, and he's clicking on blue underlined words. I ask him, "What's that?" He goes, "This is the internet." And as he's explaining it to me, light bulbs are going off in my head. I say to myself, this is going to change the world. I immediately start looking for job opportunities in Canada where I can work on the internet. Couldn't find anything, it was too early. So 2 friends and I teamed up and decided we were going to start a company that would build websites for Fortune 500 companies. We got together in his basement and we started planning things out. First step is we have to get known. We noticed there was a music trade show coming to Toronto, and we figured that would be a great place to promote ourselves. So we sat down and we put together all the steps that would be needed. First, we need to call the trade show and reserve some space. Then we need to call our internet service provider to bring internet access to our booth. Then we need to get a bunch of computers because we want to set up a little lab where potential clients could sit down and experience the internet for themselves. And then, of course, we need to get some help. We need people to set this stuff up, to be there when we're at the trade show so we look like a big, real company, and then tear everything down. And then budget. We need a budget. So we each threw our university credit card on the table, $500 limit each, times 3 equals $1,500, more than enough. So next morning, we call up the trade show. "Hello, Mrs. Trade Show Organizer. We would like to reserve space at your trade show." "No problem, sir. That'll be $10,000. We'll call you back." We regrouped that evening in my friend's basement again. We've got to come up with a new plan to do this on the cheap. So we brainstorm. We've got something. We wake up the next morning and execute. This time, we start by calling the internet service provider. "Hi, Mr. ISP. We have a proposal for you. We are going to be at the music trade show next month, and we would like to put your name and logo on the front of our booth and a stack of your flyers to give out to everybody who passes by. All we need in return is for you to provide internet access so your potential clients can experience your great service." Internet access? Check. Next, we need a few computers. We realized that there was an Apple retailer going to be at the show, so we called them up. "Hello, Mr. Apple. We are going to be at the music trade show next month, and we've secured internet access, and we plan to make an area where potential clients can come and sit down and experience the internet for themselves, and we'd like to tell every single one of them that if they would like a computer like the one they're using, they should go buy it from you. All we ask in return is you lend us half a dozen computers for 2 days next month." Computers, check. Now we need some help. We call up our old computer teacher at our high school. "Hello, Mr. Computer Teacher. We have a great opportunity for your students. Opportunity of a lifetime. Did you know it costs over $10,000 to get a space at a trade show? Your students can come out for 2 days, set up all these computers, interact with potential clients, tear everything down and clean up, and all you have to do is let them skip 2 days of school. Help, labor, check." Everything's fallen into place, but now the true moment. We're going to call back the trade show organizer. "Hello, Mrs. Trade Show Organizer. We have a proposal for you. We would like to set up at your trade show an area with a bunch of computers, which we will provide. We will bring internet access. We will bring all the labor so that your participants can sit down, get a tutorial about the internet, and experience it for themselves. It'll be a great interactive session for them. And we will pay for everything. All we ask in return is you give us some space." Trade show space. Check. So now everything's come together. One last problem. We are presenting at a music trade show, and we don't have any music-related clients. So we call up our friend who owns a band, and we tell him that we will build his website for free as long as he will attend the trade show for 2 days and tell everyone that passes by our booth how amazing we are. So everything falls into place. We're at the trade show. Things are going great. On day 2, the vice president of Warner Music walks by our booth and asks, "What's that?" And we said, "It's the internet." And the rest is history. A week later, we had a contract from Warner Music to build websites for every single artist on their roster. Soon after, we got a similar contract from A&M Records, and a little after that, Sony Music. It wasn't long before we had IBM as a client, Microsoft, all the big banks. Before you knew it, we were 120 employees. It's the year 2000. I get a call from a large public company that wants to buy us. A few months later, my company's acquired. I'm retired. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a self-made millionaire. Now let's jump ahead to 2010. My friends are playing Farmville and Bejeweled. My kids are crazy about Webkins and Angry Birds. I'm looking at this game thing. I'm going, everyone's playing games. This is crazy. A few months later, I get a call from a company that wants to build a large online children's game. And they need developers, and they want my help. I'm like, where did this come from? Totally a God thing. He's setting me up for the next big thing. So within 12 months, I've built a company, almost 100 employees in 3 countries, and everything's going great. We're finishing up our first big project, which was this initial children's game, and now it's time to go out and look for more clients. I start knocking on doors and talking to potential clients, and I run into an insurmountable problem. You see, a lot of kids, their dream is to one day grow up and make video games. So when I knock on a publisher's door and say, I have a bunch of game programmers that can help you build your games faster or build more of them, and they will only cost you $100 an hour, the game publisher comes back and says, I have a lineup of people around my building who want to work for us and make games, and they'll work for $25 an hour because it's their childhood dream. Didn't take long before I realized this is not a good business to be in. And the rest is history. We announced that we are getting out of building games for other people, laid off a bunch of people, lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and spent an entire year picking up the pieces. So the common theme in both of these stories is I took risk. And we hear the word risk a lot. We admire and praise people who've taken it. We're encouraged to take risk all the time. For some of you, when you hear the word risk, you get all excited. Others, you shrink in fear. I'm invited to colleges all the time to speak to students, and I'm told, encourage them to take risk. But I'm not here to do that with you, because I know as leaders, you will take risk. What I've learned over the years is that it's not the success or failure of the risks we take that define us, but our response. See, when we bump into failure, it's really easy to blame everyone around us, to quit, to run and look for an escape, rather than embrace the humility that failure brings, rather than showing compassion and grace to ourselves and those around us. And no matter how bad things get, to continue to grow in loving God and loving others. When we bump into success, it's easy to think we're all that, to believe that we are invincible, to start dreaming and planning the next big win, rather than walking in humility, being grateful, and no matter how good things get, continuing to grow in our love for God and a love for others. We have the perfect example in Jesus Christ. It's Palm Sunday, and he's entering the city of Jerusalem. The people have proclaimed him a success. They're singing his praises. They're treating him like a king. All the risk he took has paid off. He's on top of the world. But in the book of Matthew, it says, "Look, your king is coming to you. He is humble. He's riding on a donkey." And then 1 week later, we see Jesus stripped naked, beaten, and hanging on a cross. People are walking by and calling him an utter failure. All the risk he took has come crashing down on top of him. And in a display of loving others while going through a really hard time, Jesus says the words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I don't know what journey God has for you next. Maybe your youth group is going to double in size. Maybe you're going to pioneer the next big evangelism tool. Maybe Marco's going to be chasing you down to speak at next year's summit. Not sure. Maybe your next journey will involve your bank account shrinking to nothing, your health failing, your popularity going down the tubes, your feelings getting hurt. I'm just not sure. But I do know this. God loves you, and he's given you this position of leadership because he wants to teach you to be able to respond like him in any and every situation. He wants to build your character. Here's how you can apply this when you get back home. When that excited young person comes up to you and says, "Pastor, I have a great idea. Let's move all future youth meetings to Hooters so that we can bring alcoholics to Jesus." As you sit there and consider, should I take this risk? How soon should I start? Who should I get involved? How fast should I grow it? Ask yourself, if everything goes wrong or everything goes right, will your response reflect the character of Christ? And if the answer is no, hold the horses. Seek counsel. Maybe break it up into smaller chunks. Remember, God is trying to build your character. Keep an eye on that. And as your capacity to respond improves, take more risk. So in other words, use this tool. When you're trying to decide whether to take on a risk, don't focus on whether it'll fail or succeed, because we know God gives us assignments that can go either way, and really that's his department. But focus on what will be your response in either situation. I want you to imagine a pastor named Chris who has served for the last 10 years in a church in New York for the youth. And I want you to imagine that you're in the Starbucks at Times Square and you overhear a conversation between two of his young people. And it goes like this. "Hey, do you remember when Pastor Chris spent 3 months teaching us about Eastern religions so we could better connect with Muslims and Hindus?" "Yeah, I remember that. It was such a success, but a very risky thing to do in our church. But because of that, Sindhu and Deepa came to know the Lord, and they now attend our church, and we have been introduced to one of the largest people groups in the world. Pastor Chris is such a visionary." "Hey, do you remember the time that Pastor Chris pushed for the young people to lead a Sunday service?" "Yeah, I remember that. I'll never forget it. He had Danny preach that Sunday, and Danny said some stuff that caused a huge problem in the church, and Pastor Chris got in so much trouble." You know, there's one thing I've noticed about Pastor Chris. No matter how well things went, or how not so well things went, whether his efforts ended in success or failure, Pastor Chris always displayed love, joy, and peace, patience and kindness, goodness and faithfulness, gentleness and self-control. I want to be like Pastor Chris. Thank you.